Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over the water to Denmark once again, and this is one of the breweries who you've seen me review quite a few times now actually. So for this one we are going to return to Indslev Bryggeri once again, and we're doing another beer from the Ugly Duck Brewing Company, and this one is actually a special edition. They have their Putin wheat stout, which you will see me review a bit later, but today we're going to have a look at one of the special versions of this. So for this one we are trying Putins, and this is an imperial wheat stout aged in red wine barrels with blackberries, so it should be really nice. It comes in at 10% and it's rated at 91 on Rate Beer as well, so it should be really awesome. From what I understand, Indslev Bryggeri like to buy in single barrels, like red wine barrels and Chardonnay barrels and things like that, and they do make special batches of this beer, and as far as I know there's maybe only around 200 or so bottles of this beer ever in existence, so I do feel quite privileged that I'm able to review this one for you. So a huge thank you to Mike and Anders at Indslev Bryggeri for actually sending me across these beers. They sent me like 14 different beers to review for you, so that's why you've seen so many Ugly Duck and Indslev beers over the last little while, and there will be a few more to come in the near future as well. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the reviews, and I hope Anders and Mike have enjoyed these beers as well, as they've been really good to review. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you do want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual websites are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews, both from the Indslev beers and also from the Ugly Duck beers as well. Do check those out. There's all the usual social media, and if you do want to see more beer reviews, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And as always, to those of you in Denmark, I apologise for any bad Danish pronunciations, but please do get in touch and let me know some of the other Danish beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. But anyway, to tell you about Ugly Duck Brewing Company. So Ugly Duck is one of the beer brands brewed at Indslev Bryggeri, and these guys are based in Nørre Aaby near Middelfart on the island of Fyn in Denmark. If you think of where Copenhagen is, that is Sjælland, then you've got the Danish mainland, and Funen, or Fyn as you would say in Danish, is the island right in the middle of that, and this little town where the brewery's from is in the northwestern part there. But Indslev Bryggeri has roots that trace back to 1897, and they reopened as a modern brewery in 2006, and since 2012 they've also been brewing these beers, the Ugly Duck Brewing Company beers. These ones are the more American style beers, but the brewery is actually owned by Anders Rasmussen, whose great-grandfather Frederick built the brewery back in 1897, and both of them have grown up on this family farm that the brewery is situated on. So Indslev was actually the first modern brewery in Denmark to specialise in the brewing of wheat beer, and they actually remain the only brewery to do this in Denmark today. And you've seen me review a few of these beers from Indslev Bryggeri, and the wheat beers have a very characteristic smoothness to them. They really are very, very good, and especially the kind of hybrid styles of beer that they do. It's a really interesting and quite experimental thing, so I would recommend that you try some of these Indslev beers. But the desire to brew the more American styles and the more kind of modern styles, I guess you would say, is what led them to found the Ugly Duck Brewing Company as a kind of sidearm to the Indslev Bryggeri. But the two brewers at the brewery are Stefan Peter Stadler, who is from Munich, and he's a graduate of the Hofbräu school, and he's worked in various German and Danish breweries. And there's also Torben Steenholt, who is Danish, and he's brewed previously for Velje and for Brockhaus as well. And the brewery building has actually been modernised. It's still in that old building from 1897, but they now have a brew kit from Kasper Schultz in Bamberg in Germany. Of course, Bamberg is in the region of Franconia in northern Bavaria, a bit of a beer haven if you like, and that little town is very beautiful, and it also has 9 different breweries, so that's somewhere you want to visit if you do find yourself in Germany. But because of the 2 different breweries, they've actually got a huge range of beer. So just to list a few of these for you, in the Indslev range there's the Sortfade, which is a kind of stout wheat beer. That one is very nice. Svanefede, there's Speltbock as well. Påskefede, which is their Easter wheat beer. Julefede, which is the Christmas beer. Fede IPA, which is another really interesting hybrid beer. There's the Fide, which is the white beer. There's Fedebock, which is the Weizenbock. Frederikspalte, which is the Easter beer. Morkfede, which is also really interesting. That's a dark wheat beer. And there's also the Frokost, which is a lunch beer. But in the Ugly Duck range, they have the Imperial Vanilla Coffee Porter, which was the first one I tried. That's really nice. Hoppy Christmas, Rye Porter, Helmuth Keller beer, Miami Vice, Simcoe and Chinook IPA, Putin, which is one of the beer that this one is based off, I guess I should say. There's the Nelson Pale Ale, Ugly Christmas, Hop Devil, Foxy Brown, Papso in the Tropics, and also the Amarillo and Citra IPA. So there's a good range of beers there, and they do like to do the experimental things like this. So yeah, if you do get the chance, try some of the Ugly Duck beers. They're kind of like old school American craft beers, but they are really, really nice. The IPAs in particular are where the Ugly Duck range really shines. Some of the ones are really quite cool. I liked Miami Vice and also the Hop Devil. Those were really good. But let's actually get on to the tasting of this beer itself now. So it says on the back here, Putins. We could have named it Putins Berries, but that might have been considered rude. Who would want to be considered rude in one of the rulers of the most unfree part of the world? We didn't call it Putins Berries, but you can think of his berries anytime you like. We will, or maybe not. Are too many letters used in berries? Well, what did we do here? It was barrel-aged Putin, our imperial wheat stout, on red wine barrels, and add blackcurrant to the party as well. We let it age for a year or so, and then 6 months in the bottle. So yeah, should be quite a nice beer. This one is best before the 8th of January 2020. So yeah, this one would last a good 5 or 6 years actually, but I'm glad to be able to review it for you now. I'll let you have a quick look at the artwork on this one, but this is quite simple compared to the other Ugly Duck ones. It's just got a nice pattern on it. You can see Putin there, tells you on the back, there's all the information I was just reading to you, and it's got one of these nice kind of cork tops to it. So let's get this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting here. I remember the last time I reviewed the Saison du Chardonnay, and just after I reviewed that one, the brewery very kindly shared it on their site, but they were telling me that these beers that they do in these kind of bottles are actually one-off brews. So they basically get one barrel, and then they age one of their different beers in the barrel, and they only have maybe 200 bottles of these. So I feel very privileged that I was able to review these beers for you. So let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting here. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to be able to pull this one out, but we'll see. I managed to get this open before. There we go, it's coming out now. There we are. Sometimes these things can be a bit of a pain to get open, but we've got it now. You can see this is a green bottle as opposed to the brown ones that they normally use at the brewery as well. But this is a 375 milliliter bottle, rather than, I think it's usually a 330 one that they use. But look at the head on that beer. That's a really unusual kind of red colour that's coming out of this one. That looks really nice actually. I'll maybe see just if I can get the last little bit of this beer in there. Yeah, there you are. That's a very nice looking beer. You can really smell the vinous character off of this beer as you pour it out. It really smells like red wine. I need to get more into some red wine actually, because since I went to Japan, my girlfriend is from Japan, I really enjoy grape juice, and it really got me into the flavour of red wine a little bit more actually. So I really need to try some more wines and things like that and try and get into those too. But as you can see, this beer is poured a really nice, so like an ebony rosewood colour, but it definitely has a reddish kind of red wine tint to it. You can see there's a solid finger and a half of a frothy, I don't even know what colour to describe that as. It's a really reddish brown head. You can see that there if I bring it up to you. It maybe looks a bit beige and tan on the camera there, but it's definitely got a bit of a reddish tint to it, but it looks very, very nice, this one. Absolutely beautiful looking beer. There's some big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, but quite a few little ones just going up towards the bottom of that head. And the head, of course, is becoming very, very foamy. But let's have a look at the aroma here. And the first thing you're going to notice from this one, smells like grape juice, smells like red grape juice, or purple grape juice I should say. It does have that distinctive red wine character to it. It smells absolutely lovely. As I say, since drinking these Japanese grape juices that you get, I really have started to appreciate red wine a bit more. But you can smell underneath this, when you sugar it up a little bit, you can get some sweet chocolate out of it. A little bit of cocoa as well, like a little bit of the darker, more roasted malts. You can pick up a bit of a bready malt base too, but there really is always that kind of, that almost winey, grapey character coming out in this one. You can smell some of the blackberry fruit esters too. But this is really nice. This is a really nice smelling beer. Just take a little bit of time and smell it for yourself. You can pick up a little bit of the woody elements, and maybe there's some kind of brown sugars in here as well. A little bit of toasted brown sugar. Definitely a woody element, some wheat as well. But those fruity characters at the other side of the beer, are really interesting. Yeah, that smells like a really, really interesting beer. Of course, it's not something you'd think to do very often, is make an imperial stout with wheat and then age it on a red wine cask and put blackberries in it. Yeah, this should be really interesting. So let's see how we get on with this beer. Just enjoy the aroma of this one a little bit before you get stuck in it. It's a very, very interesting infusion. So without further ado, let's give this beer a try. So this is the Putins from Indslev Bryggeri, part of the Ugly Duck Brewing Company range in Nørre Aaby near Middelfart in Denmark. Skål, 10% imperial wheat stout aged on red wine barrels with blackberries. Cheers. Oh yeah. Now that's really unusual. It's the wine. It really is more like a wine actually than it is like a beer. Maybe my palate just needs to adjust a little bit more to it. But yeah, to me, you know, it does have some of the sour beer characteristics to it, but it really does come across like a wine actually. I mean, later in the aftertaste you start to get some of the more beery elements, but when you try this beer at first, really, it does come across more like a wine, and it feels like the actual kind of burn and things you get from this in the chest does make it feel more like a wine. Yeah, definitely. That's one of the most interesting beers and the most unusual beers I've reviewed for you on the channel actually. That's a really interesting blend of flavour in here. So if you are lucky enough to try this beer, as I always say, just sugar it around your palate a little bit and let your whole palate adjust to this one before you start dissecting it. For me, this beer really comes across as more of a wine than it does a beer, which is very, very interesting. So in the middle of the palate, after you move into the aftertaste, you can really feel some of the stouty characters coming out. It comes across as a wine in the initial part of the taste, but then really it's more like a stout beer actually. It's probably fair to say that. So in the middle of the palate, in the aftertaste, you're really getting, you can feel that your mouth has been blanketed with this kind of dark, wheaty, bready character. You can feel some of the woody notes in there as well, and some of the chocolate and the more roasted kind of coffee-ish elements in there as well. A bit of the roasted cocoa thing going on. There's a bit of a brown sugar thing as well, but not too much. You can get a little bit of toasted brown sugar, but really the focus of this beer is more on the blackberries. The blackberries come out near the front of the palate too, but just around the sides of the palate you're really getting this kind of sour red wine character actually. This beer's a lot more like a sour beer. It reminds me of some of these kind of sour beers that are really popular in Italy. Of course, the Italians are big wine drinkers, so that's why they love these kind of sour beers. This one for me definitely comes across as more of a sour beer than it does a wheat, than it does a stout or a kind of wheat beer actually. Definitely more of a sour beer than anything. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's not something I would drink, that I would drink very often, I have to admit. Like, sour beers are something that I haven't really explored too much into. It's something that I really need to do. But it's always really cool to try things like this. And I'll go and share it with my friends actually. But this is a very, very interesting beer. This is one of the most unusual ones that I've reviewed on the channel for you actually. As I say, in the latter part of the taste it really is like a stout beer, but then in the initial character it really comes in with that sharp kind of red wine, kind of purple grape character to the beer. You can feel that around the edges of your palate. Those purple grapes are just sitting there. And then there's the juicier elements from the blackberries at the front of the tongue. Underneath that, there's this kind of bready, wheaty character. There's a bit of a woody element in there, kind of oaky thing. There's a bit of vanilla too, and some of the chocolate is just lingering there, but those flavours are all in the background and very subtle. The main focus of the flavour on this one really is the kind of red wine vinous character, and also the kind of blackberry fruits that are coming out in this beer. Yeah, that's really interesting actually. It's actually quite cloying in its mouthfeel, but it's really interesting. And once your palate adjusts to it, it really is quite nice. I was expecting it just to be a kind of more subtle flavour, but based, I should have kind of gathered, because on the Saison du Chardonnay that they did, you could pick up just how sharp the vinous and sour characters were. So it's quite interesting that they're really experimenting in more of this kind of sour beer category as well. So if you get the chance to try some of these special beers with the cork tops on them, I really would recommend that you do, because this one and the Saison du Chardonnay that I did really have tested my palate a bit. So pretty cool to try things like this, so make sure you pick up some of these beers. But overall, this one, it's probably fair to describe this as being a nice sour beer. The blackberry flavours in it are really nice, and the red grapey characters are really interesting as well. And just to have those stout flavours in the background too make it a really interesting combination. So make sure you give it a go. In terms of the mouthfeel, I would say this one is probably mid-bodied. Yeah, I think it's mid-bodied. Carbonation is quite smooth on this one. It's not really oily, it's more of quite a sharp and almost kind of a little, not quite spritzy, but it's just got a very sharp and quite kind of light mouthfeel to it. It's got a lot of sour character. As I was saying, the red kind of purpley grapey flavours coming out on this one, but there is a little bit of sweetness to the malt too. But as I said, this one's more kind of juicy from the blackberry side of things. And you get those just behind the front kind of curve of the tongue there, but then around the edges of the palate, it really is. There's no real hoppy character to this beer. It's all about that kind of barrel aging in this one. So it's really quite an interesting beer. As I said, I've never tried anything really quite like this before. Probably one of the most interesting ones I've reviewed on the channel for you, so make sure you check it out for yourself. But there is a good bit of alcohol warmth to this one, so do be aware of that. It's an imperial stout sour beer, really. An imperial sour stout is probably a good way to describe this one, but very, very unusual beer. So if that's the kind of thing you're into, I would recommend that you try this one. I'm sure those of you who like sour beers will really enjoy this one. So yeah, make sure you go and check it out. But as always, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. This has been the Putins from Ugly Duck Brewing Company, part of Indslev Bryggeri in Nørre Aaby on Fyn in Denmark. Very much thank you once again for them sending these beers to me. I hope they've enjoyed the reviews that I've done for them. This is one of their special beers, and it really is quite interesting. So make sure you go and try some of the Indslev beers and the Ugly Duck things. If you like wheat beers, go for the Indslev ones. If you like the more American style, do try the Ugly Duck ones. If you like sour beers, keep an eye out for these ones with the special cork tops, because they are pretty interesting brews. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Go and check out my social media, and do let me know in the comment section your own thoughts on this beer below. Until the next time, it's Slàinte just now. Make sure you go and try some beers from Indslev Bryggeri and their Ugly Duck Brewing Company range too. Slàinte just now, and I'll catch you soon. Once again, thank you to Mike and Anders for sending this beer, and I hope you guys have enjoyed the review. Slàinte.